Being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise. Most people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. I love and work. Work and love, that's all there is. If youth knew, if age could. The mind is like an iceberg, it floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. The great question that has never been answered, and which I have not yet been able to answer, despite my 30 years of research into the feminine soul, is what does a woman want? He that has eyes to see and ears to hear may convince himself that no mortal can keep a secret. If his lips are silent, he chatters with his fingertips, betrayal oozes out of him, at every pore. I cannot think of any need in childhood as strong as the need for a father's protection. I have found little that is good about human beings on the whole. In my experience, most of them are trash, no matter whether they publicly subscribe to this or that ethical doctrine or to none at all. That is something that you cannot say aloud, or perhaps even think. The first human who hurled an insult instead of a stone was the founder of civilization. Flowers are restful to look at. They have neither emotions nor conflicts. What a distressing contrast there is between the radiant intelligence of the child and the feeble mentality of the average adult. The psychical, whatever its nature may be, is itself unconscious. Men are more moral than they think and far more immoral than they can imagine. What we call happiness in the strictest sense comes from the, preferably sudden, satisfaction of needs which have been dammed up to a high degree. The voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. A man who has been the indisputable favorite of his mother keeps for life the feeling of a conqueror. A man should not strive to eliminate his complexes but to get into accord with them. They are legitimately what directs his conduct in the world. Is no gift of civilization. It was greatest before there was any civilization. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. Analysis of neurotics has taught us to recognize the intimate connection between wetting the bed and the character trait of ambition. The act of birth is the first experience of anxiety, and thus the source and prototype of the effect of anxiety. Just as a cautious businessman avoids investing all his capital in one concern, so wisdom would probably admonish us also not to anticipate all our happiness from one quarter alone. Opposition is not necessarily enmity, it is merely misused and made an occasion for enmity. The doctor should be opaque to his patients and, like a mirror, should show them nothing but what is shown to him. Obviously, one must hold oneself responsible for the evil impulses of one's dreams. In what other way can one deal with them? Unless the content of the dream rightly understood is inspired by alien spirits, it is part of my own being. A belligerent state permits itself every such misdeed, every such act of violence, as would disgrace the individual. Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. A woman should soften, but not weaken. A man had thought about cocaine in a kind of daydream. The dream is the liberation of the spirit from the pressure of external nature, a detachment of the soul from the fetters of matter. Words and magic were in the beginning one and the same thing, and even today words retain much of their magical power. Our memory has no guarantees at all, And yet we bow more often than is objectively justified to the compulsion to believe what it says. When one does not have what one wants, one must want what one has. We are what we are because we have been what we have been. A complete absence of sex is the only thing which can be properly considered sexual deviance.